to open up our content browser. And we've got these three textures here inside of our dry rocky ground material, or whatever other material that you might have. And I'm just going to drag all three of these right into our material. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put this color texture up at the top here, and I'm going to plug it into layer rocky ground, and then I'm going to plug this into the base color. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the second one blank, and I'm going to put this third one here. I'm going to grab the red output, and I'm going to put this into layer rocky ground. I'm going to grab the green input, and I'm going to put this on layer eroded, on layer rocky ground. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this top one here, the red output, and this is going to go into the roughness pin. And then this, the green output here, this is going to go into the ambient occlusion right here. And now you can see we're starting to see a little bit of actual material effect going on. So now we have our normal map right here. We're just going to grab the RGB output into the layer rocky ground, and we're going to bring this output into the normal section. So now you can see we have this bumpy, rocky material, except you will notice that it looks way too shiny. So this is actually how we're going to create our wet sand layer. Is we're just going to take one of our sand textures. We're going to use all the same outputs, except we're going to up our specular value and maybe bring down our roughness so that it appears more shiny and wet. But for this rock, for this layer, I don't want it to be quite like this. So that's why we have this extra layer blend node here. And what we're going to do here is we're actually going to turn down our specular. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the 1 key on my keyboard, and then I'm going to left click, and this is going to create a parameter node. Another way that you could create this is to just right click and search for a constant, and then you can just get it that way as well. So I'm just going to plug this into layer rocky ground, and then I'm going to plug this output into the specular. And you can see if it's set to 0 by default, you see we now have a much flatter, much drier looking texture. But I do want a little bit of specular still, so I'm going to turn this to something like 0.03 probably. And this way, if we catch it from the right angle, we can still see a little bit of that shininess. So that, I think, is going to be good for our first layer. And now what we get to do is put in 8 more, or 7 more, or however many more of these we have to do. And we're basically just going to do the same thing for each of these. So I'm going to show you how to do the next few, and I might go through all of them. But if we just go through half of them, you might have the idea by then, and then you can just skip ahead. So let's go to our limestone cliff material. At least that's what it's called for me. Might be something different for you. You can use whatever materials that you want. And let's just sort these out. So we've got our color here, we've got our normal map down here, and then we've got our roughness and our ambient occlusion right here. So let's start linking these up. So we've got our color to color. That's all we need to do there. We've got this one. We're just going to plug the red in here and the green in there. And then on this last one, we're just going to plug the RGB into layer eroded cliff, just like that. We can save this here. And now what you're going to notice over here is that we don't see anything different. This all looks the same. So what we can do if we want to change that is we can select all of our layer blend nodes, and like I mentioned earlier, we can adjust the preview weight. So we can go into the rocky ground material here that we currently have set to our weight, and we can set this to 0. So now it's not displaying that at all, it's just random darkness. And then we can go to eroded cliff, and we can turn our preview weight up to 1. So now we can actually see what we're working with. We see, well, how does this look? And honestly, that looks pretty dang good. So I think we can keep this just like so. I'm pretty happy with that. So now we'll move on to our next material. Just hit Control Space, go to this grass material, drag our textures in, drop them right here, sort them out. And start plugging them all in. RGB, we got our red and green here, and our normal map. And then once again, we will select all of these and adjust our preview weights so that we can make sure this looks perfect and amazing and awesome. And that doesn't look bad, although I think I might actually bring the specular up on this a little. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the 1 key on my keyboard, left click, and I'm going to bring the specular value into layer grass 1. And I'll turn this up to, let's just play around with this a little bit. Let's try 0.1 first. It might be a little high. It might be a little high. Let's try, oh, it set it to 1 for some reason. I wanted 0.1, darn you. Yeah, something like that'll probably be okay. And if we decide to change it later on, we most certainly can. So let's grab our next material. This is going to be our second grass. Drag in our textures, sort them on out. And it looks like we might need to make a little bit more room here as well. Getting a little bit crowded. So I'll bring these back as well as these, just to give us some more room. Plug in our RGB, red and green. So we got our RGB, red and green. Just got to make sure that you're plugging in all of these where they need to go. And then after we get all of these in, there is one last key thing that we are going to need to do. That's very, very simple, but it is very important. And that is we're going to need to add a special node called a landscape coordinates or something like that. And it's going to allow us to basically set the UVs of our actual thing. They'll allow us to set the UV coordinates of where each material is appearing. So that way stuff actually looks the way it should. I'm having a hard time explaining exactly what it does technically speaking, but it's required to make it work. That's all you need to know, really. All right, so we just got these last few ones to plug in here. Getting real close. Okay, just like so. And now we just have to do our layer wet sand. So let's just go along here and let's just replug all of our last texture samples here for our, well, I guess we should determine which sand we want to be the smooth sand. So we've got two textures. One of them I have here, I think this is probably the one that I'll use, is a bit smoother. And then the other one I believe is a bit more coarse. Yeah, so I don't want this one. This one is going to be used for some other areas. I think it'd be best to have some nice smooth sand as the wet areas. So we'll just grab this. This is the one that we're going to be using for the wet, or that I'm going to be using for the wet layer. So it's the second to last one. Just plug that into all of these. And there we have it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to hit one on our keyboard, left click, and put this into layer wet sand, and we'll bring it up to maybe like 0.7 or something. And now what we can do is we can just go through and double check all of our different layers by adjusting our layer weight on all of these, just to make sure that everything looks the way it should. So let's just do that real quick. Gonna go to 0 and 1, so we're just checking grass 2 out. And what we'll do is we'll probably add a little bit of specular to this. So once again, add a node here, and I'll maybe just bring this up to probably not too high, probably no higher than 1. And I might even end up bringing these down again. You know, it's all about playing around with stuff.